Welcome to All Things Flamingo podcast with the Flamingo Group and myself, Beth Reilly. Join us as we discuss all things to do with our community, real estate, and all things flamingo. Welcome and tune in for a flocking good time. Well, hello.
Hi,
Today
Beth.
we have Ian Meredith with Summit Brewing Company in St. Paul. And Ian, you've been there over 10 years as the area sales manager.
That is correct. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. This will be a specific webinar in the sense that we'll talk about beer and all things beer as far as Summit's concerned, but we're going to dig a little bit more into NA and sort of really what's going on in that market. But before then, if you could tell me a little bit about Summit. It has a really nice, rich history that I'd love to hear about.
Yeah. So Summit was founded in 1986 in St. Paul, Minnesota. Our founder, Mark Stutrud, is still our CEO and acting president of our board now. Still works 5-6 days a week. He's very active in the community, lives in St. Paul. But we've been around since 86 and we're now in our second facility. So we originally started on University Avenue in 280 in an old auto part shop. And then we just in 1996, we broke ground on a new facility on Montreal Circle. That was actually owned by the Port Authority down on the bluffs above Shepherd Road.
Nice.
And that was the first facility built in the state of Minnesota from the ground up since Prohibition. In 97 was when we opened. And we actually imported a full 4-vessel, 100% copper German brew house, which still is in operation today and does 100% of our product. And wow. We've grown incrementally over the years. So since 1986, we've seen growth up until just a few years back, and we are now the 31st largest brewery in the country. And we do 100% of our own production, which is different than a lot of folks that are on that list as well. We have a 5-state footprint. We service Minnesota, the Dakotas, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And
those are some good brewing states.
Oh yeah, they're good. They're good drinking states for sure.
Yeah.
Strong brewing.
What else are we going to do 6 months of the year? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No. So, but yeah, we've grown our business on the back of a brand called Extra Pale Ale. It is the best-selling beer in the state of Minnesota, craft beer, and it is an English style American pale ale. It's kind of a hybrid beer. With some imported English ingredients and some American ingredients as well.
Can you tell me a little bit between what's a craft beer and like a basic run-of-the-mill beer?
Sure. Like, a lot of things there's a lot of different definitions for craft, but a lot of it has to do with your size. So production size, capacity, and things like that. Most craft breweries brew under 2 million production barrels a year. Most of your larger domestic breweries will do upwards of 5-10 million production barrels in a calendar year.
Okay.
It's also just an adoption of a certain mantra of brewing. So it's sticking to 4 main ingredients, experimenting with new things, not using a lot of adjunct. So things that are not hops, water, malt, or yeast, things like corn. A lot of folks will put in beer and things like that. So we steer clear of a lot of those. It sticks to some of that German purity law, and lots of, experimentation. So.
Yeah, because it seems like when there's corn added, it gets pretty sweet, and I don't get that sweet taste or aftertaste, I think, that comes with it.
Yeah, I agree. So it kind of gives you a nice sweetness for corn, but it also helps you get your alcohol up without having to use a lot of raw materials. So, okay. But craft beer is really it's a segment of the brewing industry. It's growing, and it's really starting to take on its own forms. We've got some heritage breweries like Summit that are leading the way. So,
yeah, with good tasting beer. You guys have never skimped on quality. Can you tell me a little bit about? You just talked about all of the different. You stick to the 4 basics, which you said was hops, malt, water, and grain, right? Is that it?
And yeast. Yeah. The malt would be some sort of malted grain. So people would use like a 2-row barley or wheat often. Sometimes they use rye, things like that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like that's one thing that I would give Mark a lot of credit for. Over the years, he took no shortcuts, and when he wanted to do something, he really invested in it. So we're talking about top tier equipment. With there's not many breweries left in the country that are brewing on full copper. I think if you ask any classically trained brewer if they could brew on copper, they would prefer to. But there's just not a lot of manufacturing for that, and it's very expensive to produce those nowadays. So to go find a copper vessel brew house and still have that produce 100% of our product is very unique. Probably less than a dozen breweries in the country that are doing that.
Wow.
And then things like, we're also one of only a handful of breweries in the country that naturally carbonate 100% of our product. And in large
naturally,
part
that's the key word, right? Naturally carbonate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So throughout the brewing process, the fermentation process, you get CO2, but most breweries then will release the CO2, and then they'll actually force carbonate the product for packaging. But we actually retain the CO2 in our fermenters, and then we recycle it back into the liquid. So, it's a real commitment to quality. It costs a lot of money. Our fermenters are very expensive. They need to be jacketed with glycol to prevent any kind of disasters from imploding or exploding of fermentation tanks.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when I say too, Mark also really heavily invested in quality assurance, quality control from the beginning. So spending a lot of money on a full lab. So we have a microbiologist, we have a serial scientist that work on things. We're testing our beers throughout the entire brewing process. So from, it's in the kettles brewing all the way to the fermenters. And then we're testing it once packaged too, to make sure we're not getting things like dissolved oxygen in the liquid, which would make a beer go flat very fast. So
good.
Yeah,
it does make a difference. It also, and then so your storage is also, I know you guys are very particular about your storage too, after it's actually brewed and bottled. It's always in cold, did you say? Or
yeah, so with all of our, so we deal 100% with third party wholesalers to distribute our product. And it's in all of their contracts that product needs to be stored cold. After it's done with our production runs at the brewery, it goes directly into a cooler, and it lives there till it goes to our wholesalers. We also work pretty tirelessly talking to retail accounts about cold storage and making sure beer is well rotated. So you get the oldest beer sold first. But all things that we're working on constantly. And really, you can taste the difference in the end when we check the market, we try a lot of product, and I don't taste a lot of off beer out there for us. So.
Yeah. And I did go through your plant. Oh, I think it was the early 2000s. I think I went through the plant. I did see the copper brewing vessels and how that worked. And Mark did the actual tour. So that was pretty fun. Nice. We did it for a nonprofit gig that we were doing. And the other thing I think we saw it when Saga came out.
Okay. So that was about 10 years ago then.
Yeah. So he had to tell us the whole story, or as you would say, the whole saga of how it got its name, what happened. It was very fun. It was, I thought it was nice and unique. We got to have the original brewer in there that was telling us how this all came together for him and for the community.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's one thing that I enjoy as a person who lived in St. Paul for a long time, is how involved in the community not only our brewery as our company is, but also Mark. So he's very, very dedicated to the community. So.
Yeah, well, that will keep it going. I always think of Summit first. So I was pretty excited when I met you. I was like, oh, I like this beer. This is my favorite. And
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, just recently I decided, I drive for a living since I'm a realtor. Obviously, I'm always in my car, and I decided I'm not going to drink anymore. I just couldn't take the risk. And I'm not really a good drinker in the sense that I pretty much feel my beer immediately, but I didn't want to give up beer. So I started drinking your non-alcoholic line.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't feel I was missing anything.
That's good. Cause it's hard to do. And then, our non-alcoholic beers, we call them Neelis, is the line of beers. So it's Neelis means nothing in Irish Gaelic, which our head brewer is an Irishman. And so it's a 3.5-year project, a very hefty investment from the brewery. It's the first and only beer we're doing pasteurizing currently. So we had to actually put a pasteurizer into our facility to make this product. But it was something that we thought we could really service a new clientele with, a new consumer base. And
So,
it's been going well. So
okay, so my understanding is that it's a full beer, but then what do you do to take the alcohol out? Because it tastes like a full beer.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was kind of always our goal with this project, was to brew a beer first and then figure out how to make it non-alcoholic,
Okay.
which is probably a different way than a lot of people are approaching this project. But
Yep.
like I said, it took about 3.5 years with Damian McCon, who's our head brewer, and Zach Quant, who's our quality assurance, quality control manager. Really trying a bunch of different things. There's a lot of technology out there nowadays, and most folks are doing what you would call, they're basically brewing a full beer and then they're stripping it of alcohol by either heating it or filtering it out in some sort of way. And we could do that, but we actually feel pretty strongly about the technique that we chose, because we feel like it keeps flavor in the beer, flavor and
Yeah.
aroma, what you're looking for. So we're actually using a European yeast strand to brew our beers. And it's a specialty yeast strand that really, we call it restricted fermentation. So it brews a beer and imparts a lot of the flavors that you'd want. It creates your carbonation, but it doesn't actually produce ethanol or alcohol. So we're brewing a beer just like we'd brew any other beer, only using a different yeast strain, which prevents the yeast from creating the ethanol in the beer.
Wow. That's an excellent detail, because everybody else is telling me exactly what you just had said, was that they brew a full beer and then they were pulling the alcohol out.
Yeah,
Where you're
absolutely.
still brewing a full beer, but you're not pulling anything out of it.
Yep. And so it doesn't, in other words, we don't have to beat the beer up. We don't have to, heat it to hell. We don't have to strip it of any flavor and aroma. It just allows us to be able to maintain the quality of the beer that we're looking for. And it really is fairly unique to our brewery. So I think you'll start seeing a lot more folks who are venturing into this category, brewers starting to use a similar technique as time marches on. But for now, we're one of the few that are using this restrictive fermentation. So
we do a lot on social media, and it was interesting as I started. We did mocktails and things like that around Christmas, just to get people to think of other things they could make instead of having to drink, because so many people have to drive, right? So that's a big deal. And I got tons of hits on that. And we also, even now, we just started promoting you in this, and we started to get some hits because people want to know more about this, not only the process of what you're doing for the beer, but it is getting to be very socially appropriate that you put out a non-alcoholic drink as well, not soda all the time, but you put out a non-alcoholic drink along with everything else at parties.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think in general too, even at like bars and restaurants, we're seeing a lot more extensive menus for non-alcoholics, whether it's beer. I've even seen some non-alcoholic wines on menus now. Like you said, mocktails have become a huge menu item for people. They're really putting an emphasis on that. And all the industry, at least brewing industry, publications that I read regularly, all the statistics are also pointing towards this being a growing segment. I always think that it'll be a niche portion of the market for beer, but I think it's definitely a growing portion. And statistics are also telling us that this younger generation of drinkers, they don't drink like as much as previous generations. So we're meeting people where they're at, and we're
right.
We're really servicing a different kind of clientele. So it's
So
a
when you're
project that was
saying
important to us.
Right. So when you're saying it's trending, you guys just recently went to Europe too. Could you tell me a little bit of what's going on in that market? Is there more non-alcoholic options in Europe than there are here? What's sort of trending there?
I mean, I think yes, in certain countries for sure. So I think you're referring to my wife and I went to Europe.
Yeah, when
So
a couple weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, we were in the south of France for a little bit, and then we were in Monaco. But
Nice.
Non-alcoholic beer has been pretty prevalent, especially in like Germany, which has a heavy brewing culture for a long time. Most of the big production breweries in Germany have always had some offerings. And you see that too in America with a lot of the big domestic breweries have had offerings for quite a while. I think we're just kind of finally starting to get into a place where some craft brewers are getting into the game a little bit and trying to make, I don't want to say a higher quality non-alcoholic product, but maybe a more flavorful
Which is higher quality.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not here to have a bunch of light beers that taste, like just tastes like urine is all I can say. It just tastes terrible. Tastes absolutely terrible. So
Yeah, I mean,
that the craft side of it is what I really dig. I mean, that's what
yeah,
I've been looking at.
absolutely. No, it's been a fun little project, and we're looking to expand on the series as time marches on, add more styles, do different things. But really, I mean, it gets us into some areas where we don't get to be otherwise. You know, this beer is, like I said, pasteurized, so that adds to some shelf stability for us, so we can get
Okay.
into grocery stores and things like that. So you'll see our products in Targets and Cub Foods, Cub Groceries, Lunds and Byerly's, Kowalski's, things like that. So I mean, it gets us into some new areas where current Minnesota laws don't allow us to be with full strength alcoholic
Right.
products. So.
Yep. Not going to happen. Also, you had, right before we started, I heard the can pop, and you are drinking which one now?
Yeah, so I'm drinking the Neelis Irish Dark, which is one of two products we have in the Neelis lineup. We got to figure out, there it is.
There it is.
And we released both at the same time about a year and a half ago. And so we have this Irish Dark, which is our version of what you'd call an Irish Stout. We just can't legally call it that. So this is a darker style beer. It's got really big flavors of espresso and chocolate and caramel, spicy hot malt character. And then we actually use all imported ingredients, so imported malts from Europe, and then European hops as well. So
wow,
and then
I haven't tried that one. I drink your IPA.
Okay, the Neelis IPA, yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's I'll say this: I'm surprised at how equally both are selling, especially as we released it throughout the summer and things like that. The dark beer is keeping up with the IPA, but
that's
the IPA
interesting.
is definitely edging it out just a little bit. So
it's a little bit. Well, if you like an IPA, you like an IPA. I think there's drinkers that like it, and there's people that will never. It's too bitter. But
sure.
it definitely is much more my choice. Now we have all of your beers up here, which is pretty terrific. Your leading drink, of course, is the Extra Pale Ale. That's your leader.
Extra Pale Ale is the first beer we brewed 37 years ago, and it's still our best-selling beer. It's still the best-selling craft beer in the state of Minnesota, and that's actually, Mark Starwood, our founder, that was his recipe formulation. So he came up with that quite a while ago. It looks like the next two on the list, you've got our two most recent seasonal offerings. So we've got a seasonal lineup where currently it's our winter ale, which is an English winter warmer would be the style. It's kind of like a brown ale, but the hops and malt in there give it a nice spicy characteristic that a brown ale wouldn't have.
Okay.
And then the one next to that would be our Oktoberfest, which is our best-selling seasonal. It's a German-style Marzen. So it's an amber lager, stronger beer. And that's something we release usually in the fall, like August, September, run it through October. And then we kind of get into some of our different IPAs. So we've got, Saga, which is our flagship IPA, which I know you mentioned. Yeah. We started brewing about 10 years ago. And that still is our best-selling IPA. But as you mentioned also, Saga herself, the Goddess series is we're adding in beers every single day on that series pretty much. So we have Saga Hazy. We've got an imperial version of Saga now, and we're going to have a tropical version of Saga. And then we've got all four of those in a variety pack that we just released a few weeks ago. So,
well, the tropical, what's the main? Usually that has a fruit base to it. What's the main fruit base on the tropical?
Yeah, so what makes it tropical in flavor and aroma is primarily it's going to be we're using a lot of southern hemisphere hops, so hops that are growing south of the equator. And what that does is where, depending on where you plant hops, a lot like wine grapes, the flavor profile changes. So when you plant a hop down in the southern hemisphere, it tends to give you nice tropical aroma and flavors. Nice. But we also do add a little bit of passion fruit puree. So there is a little bit of that in there, but the primary driving force of the tropical flavor and aroma would be the choice of hops that we use. So,
and then with your nitros, can you tell me a little bit about nitro? I know just so everybody can kind of be educated on what is that?
Yeah. So we brew one beer that we do on nitro gas. Sorry, excuse me. And we don't do anything in package as of right now, but we do an oatmeal stout. So it's an Scottish style stout, and it's got oats in there as part of its malted barley, or its malt build. Sorry. But the big difference between a nitro beer and regular carbonated beer is we still use CO2 throughout the brewing process. But then when it comes time to serve the product, we're actually using nitrogenated gas to push the product. And then we're agitating as it goes. And what it'll do is it'll cascade similar to like a Guinness and give you a nice creamy mouthfeel that you don't get from like a regular CO2 pushed beer. So we only do one style for now. We've messed around with some in the past, limited runs for our own premise, the Ratskeller, which as we call it. But it really, I think oatmeal stout, where you find it, I always drink it. I think it's great.
Yeah,
it's true. Creamy mouthfeel. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the Ratskeller since you just mentioned it.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, we opened up a new facility in 1997, and we're right off of 7th Street in St. Paul and 35E. We're just on the bluffs above Shepherd Road. It's a really beautiful facility that we actually bought the property from the St. Paul Port Authority. We own two buildings and about 10 acres down there. And we have a really nice consumer-facing area to come enjoy some beers. We call it the Summit Ratskeller, which in German, Ratskeller is like a gathering place. So just remodeled a handful of years ago. Beautiful high ceilings, nice woodwork. We have some shows every now and again. We have pretty limited hours though, Thursday through Sunday. I think you got on there 3 to 8.
Yeah. And we have Saturday. So it's Thursday
Saturday
through Sunday.
Yeah, Thursday through Sunday, 3 to 8.
Okay.
And then we do have a nice outdoor patio when the weather changes. Kind of overlooks the bluffs a little bit. We have some board games, things like that. There's a St. Paul Cubing Society uses it for their leagues. We generally, the days that we aren't open, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we leave that space open for nonprofits. So we use a lot of folks come in. I know you said that you had come through with a tour. Yeah. So, but we also allow some folks to use the property more often than not for free of charge to host their nonprofit organization. So
very fun. Yeah. Do you have any food, or is it mainly?
We don't have a kitchen on site, but we always have when we're open for public hours, we have food trucks available. Perfect. And you can go to our website, summitbrewing.com, and they have listed out all of the food trucks. And we also have any other specialty events going on at the brewery, whether it's trivia here and there or some live music, or I think we had a fly fishing Thai group in there. They were teaching me about Thai fly fishing lures. So
that's a good group.
Oh yeah, they're a fun group. So
I bet. Now, are you guys going to get into the hoppy water at all? That seems to be the next arena of non-alcoholic beverages.
I can say with confidence that there's no plans as of now for 2024. But we're starting the marketing team, and some of the guys who make the decisions on products for the year are starting to look at 2025. And I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility. It's just definitely, it's not something that's been discussed in any kind of great detail at this point. So I know the hop waters have been going well. So
yeah, they're kind of, I haven't tasted the flavored ones. I've kind of just tried some of when they first came out, I started tasting them. It was just kind of bitter water. So I wasn't really intrigued by it, but I guess as they get into flavors and different things, that's where you'll probably come up with some tasty stuff. But right now I'm not super intrigued yet. It's kind of expensive.
Yeah. I mean, some of that stuff, can be price prohibitive. I mean, again, there is a consumer for it. I know there are some that are doing incredibly well throughout the country. And I've heard good things about the flavor profiles. I personally haven't tried any of them. But I'm not saying we'll never do it, but it's not on the docket for 2024. So,
okay. That's fair. Like I said, I've tried them. I'm not madly in love with it yet, but as soon as I get the right flavor, I usually right away start buying it and keeping it in the house.
Sure.
So the other thing I think I sent to you in a text message was just NA Day, which was in Chicago, as they started to have a whole festival on non-alcoholic drinks. It was mocktails, but also they had a series of different beers. They were all craft beers. And this was in Chicago. I think we had brought this up.
Sure.
I really appreciate your time on this. Thank you so much. I feel blessed that I got to have the opportunity to have you on. And then also we've also done real estate. So that was another area that we got to talk a little bit about that. And I'm glad that you're a proud Bloomington resident.
Absolutely. Yeah. We love the new house. So thanks for helping us out there. That was good.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think we're done with everything here. Is there anything that I've missed?
Not that I can think of. No. Just, yeah. Thanks for trying the beers, and they're out in market. So check them out. 5-state footprint.
Please do drink all the beers. And if you like NAs, I think they're the best on the market. So, and I've tried a lot of them because it was like, yeah, I can't drink anymore because I can't handle it, but I can always drink NA. So these have been my favorites. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.